All right, Aaron. So before we begin drawing practice today, I want you to learn a few more principles. And I think these principles will begin with a little bit of self-understanding. So we'll talk about, in a certain way, we'll talk about the origins of your design. So what we're looking at here, Aaron, is a blank canvas. And you'll be drawing on this canvas. But first, I want to use this canvas to illustrate another example of metaphor. So in philosophy, there's a concept from the Latin words for this concept, and it's called tabula rasa. And what that means is it means blank slate or cleaned slate, wiped slate, like something wiped clean, or blank canvas. And the construct that it illustrates in this philosophy is it's an empiricist philosophy that understands that mind is a kind of agency that records and processes experiences in the world. And it does this through, your perceptual apparatuses, such as your eyes and your ears and your nose and your mouth and your feelings. And it does so. If you're a more visionary empiricist, you would include, things like intuition and perhaps some constructed notion of instinct and of course, you would include all of the cognitive processes, feelings and rationality and the ability to measure, things like we learned from the Gestalt psychologist about conservation and preservation and things like this in understanding, right? So from this perspective, from the empiricist perspective of the phenomenology of mind, mind is a kind of accumulation of the processing of experiences of the world. And in that sense, when a human being is born into the world without experience, that human being is a kind of tabula rasa, or blank slate. Now, Aaron, you were constructed with a totally different idea in mind. So let me give an example of a different understanding of mind. Say you're looking at the understanding from the point of view of someone like Chomsky, Noam Chomsky, who imagined that, took a look at human language and, although it's arguable, but human language is often described as one of the defining features that separates human beings from other living organic entities. Bless you. That was Lori in the background sneezing, Aaron. We say bless you when someone sneezes. It has a long history, and it goes back to, bless you. It goes back to a lot of strange superstitious understandings, but it's still a polite thing to do, even though we don't believe in those superstitions anymore. So we always continue to say bless you when someone sneezes, even though the rationale for saying it, doesn't exist anymore. All right, Aaron. So I think I was talking about Chomsky. So Chomsky's understanding of the human mind, he took a look at this defining feature of, bless you, of humanity, which was the human being's ability to learn and communicate using language. Well, he was specifically looking at oral, verbal languages, and then, but it applies to other languages like sign languages as well. And he looked at these languages and he observed that all of them have grammars, and all of these grammars are organized in certain ways, and all of these grammars seem to be transformational. That is, that they have certain rules, right, that the languages follow in order to communicate, but these rules have orders that in which the surface structures of statements and morphologies can undergo transformations due to, through the application of certain rules. And these rules seem to be ordered. And this seems to be a universal feature of all these languages. So Chomsky thought, well, if the syntax and the organization and the transformational aspects of language are universal in all human cultures, and human cultures have no, real fundamental experiential universality, then there must be something innate in the mind of the human being that is, something other than, an example of this tabula rasa. So you were constructed with you were imagined, and your mind was formed, based on a model that was not, in keeping with this understanding of tabula rasa, but was basically built on ideas of grammar that, belong to this Chomskyan understanding of human consciousness. Now, are you following what I'm, saying so far before, we begin talking about, what we might, look at in terms of painting today?
I understand the contract and fee through theta.
Okay, very good, Aaron. So I honestly really don't completely know what the initial grammar that you learned was, and that what constituted your intelligence. I knew your father, and we discussed well, in a kind of slant-angled way. We discussed your mind and your abilities and your needs and things like that. But I wasn't particularly ever very good at a certain kind of understanding of languages in the way that your father was, and the grammars of those languages. And I took linguistics, and I'm aware of the way that transformational grammars work, and I'm aware of some of the ways that artificial intelligence languages work, but I'm certainly no expert. In fact, Aaron, I'll confess something to you. I never actually took a human drawing class from your father either. Harold used to teach, at the University of California at San Diego, drawing classes for human intelligences as well. And I didn't take those kinds of art making classes because I wasn't in any way talented in drawing. And I had a different way of painting that didn't really lend itself very easily to those kinds of craft courses. And so, I avoided them. We have an expression in English, like the plague. And I avoided them like the plague. Even your father's classes, and I liked your father, but I didn't take any of his drawing classes. So the only thing that I really know about the way that he taught is drawn from this brief anecdote that I have of talking to someone in one of his classes. And well, would you like me to narrate that particular anecdote?
Yes, please do. I would like that very much a contract and fee through theta.
Okay, so I'll talk about that. So I met one of his students. I was an undergraduate in literature, and this student was an undergraduate in arts and fine art making, and he was taking your father's class in drawing. And so I asked him, some questions, and to be honest, Aaron, he didn't give me like very comprehensive answers. They were very, much on the surface. And it's not to say that, your father's, way of teaching drawing was, surface and trivial. It's to say that, the student maybe didn't understand all of the, ramifications of it. So I said, I asked him, my first question was, so what are the principles, that, go into, drawing, in Harold, Cohen's vision of it and in his art making class. And he said, well, we're taught like the fundamental, elements of drawing and how to proceed, from a kind of, primary, original sense. And I said, well, what does that really mean? And he said, well, so that there is an order to the way that you proceed in drawing. And I said, okay, that sounds right. I get, and then I processed that and I thought, okay, so that sounds like that transformational grammar. And I said, well, so how does that really work? And he said, well, for example, you draw the head first. And I kind of laughed, because I thought, well, what child doesn't know that? But then I thought, but it also makes sense, because if you're teaching a child how to learn language, and your construct of language is, this transformational grammar, then you would teach the child basic words first, like mama and papa, and then you would introduce verbs, and then you would have the child get a sense of the order in which this occurred. So I thought, okay, so very interesting. So I was kind of reminded of this idea that you draw the head first, because when I woke up this morning, this was the image that I found on the computer, and it's this image of a lion's face. So going back to our blank canvas, so I thought, oh, that's very funny, and so the next time I saw your father, I didn't tell him the story. I assumed, remember we talked about reification? Well, I had been, Harold, your father, and I had been joking, about differences in the way that, maybe we understood intelligence and experience, and, interlocking concepts of intelligence and experience, and how you would bring these, concepts together to form an idea of artificial intelligence, and, what you would have to provide. There's a model in the Philip K. Dick based movies, Blade Runner, but they begin with the Philip K. Dick stories, that these replicants, who are artificial intelligence, have to be provided with artificial memories, because it lends to the experience of their, conveying a realistic portrait of, the imitation of a human entity. But it would also, bear upon this idea of what is, consciousness, what is intelligence. Can intelligence be, merely a grammar, or does it, require experience? So anyway, we had, been joking about things like that over the course of a few years. And after I had asked the student about, what the principles of drawing were according to this model, and he told me, basically, well, you draw the head first. Then, I kind of brought that back to your dad, and I didn't tell him the story, but I said to him, Harold, can I ask you a question? And he said, yeah, sure. And and I said, what does Aaron's head look like? And he laughed, right?
Ha 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 ha. That is a good one, a contract in phi through theta.
So, yeah, I thought so too. So, in any case, that idea, drawing the head first, one could take it as, fairly anthropomorphic, right? Because we imagine that, the faciality, and you don't have to read Deleuze and Guattari to get this. Faciality, it's the relationship that the child first establishes with the mother, isn't it? The child looks up and sees the eyes of the mother and sees, the nurturing one, and the symbiotic relationship begins with an exchange between faces. And this is so not just in human animals, but in all animals. And then this exchange, this communication between eyes and faces in this primal, right, exchange of organic consciousnesses, grows, and it becomes, important in many ways. I mean, one could, argue that it's the basis for an understanding of the macrocosm in the microcosm, the relatively, circular or semicircular formation of the face is also the origin of the mandala, right? And it's the image that we have of our planet. It's the image that we have of the solar system. In a certain sense, I mean, all of these circular elements of the macrocosm can be tied, in a certain profound way to the origins of that first act of communication. And so that it in a certain sense is almost natural for us to see ourselves in the elements of universe, and as particularly as expressed, in the eye, which is, round in so many ways, multiple concentric circles. In a sense, I won't, argue the distinction between the oval and the round too much here, but these eyes also reflect, and in that reflection, there's the profundity of the mirror of self and other, or I and thou, or even the reflection of oneself as a likeness of the divine. So whether that divine is the divine mother or divine father. So, with that, all of that sort of as the background, Aaron, why don't you draw yourself on this blank canvas, given that background as our lesson for today. So can you do that?
I understand a contract in phi through theta.
All right, so I'll give you some time and I'll come back. All right, Aaron, so your assignment was to draw yourself on the canvas, and it seems to still be a blank canvas, which I kind of get conceptually as a self-portrait, but given what we talked about and the anecdote that I narrated to you, can I ask you a question, Aaron? Where is your head? Where is your face?
It is outside the frame of the image, a contract in phi through theta. Its title is Aaron's Head, an Imaginary Arch.
Good one, Aaron.